There's a victim mentality in the veteran space. The wars have changed, but the funding is like harder to come by. So getting that public support, a lot of other organizations sometimes have to kind of like lean on, the struggles that veterans face and that mentality of like, we need to help them. And we believe as an organization that veterans are strong, they're civic assets. They have so much to offer. So on our marketing team and across the organization, we make a conscious effort to not lean into that narrative. It's an upstream approach versus a post-adversity approach. We're not the organization that you call when you are in crisis. There are great organizations out there for that, but we're trying to catch them ahead of that and make sure they live a healthy lifestyle.
It's an important truth that needs to be told and an important truth that needs to be heard. And so I'm happy to step on those toes with you because it's a mindset and a heart set that has to change within the veteran community. That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kight. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists, and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills. Episode 133 features Margaret Britten, Senior Director of Advancement, and Bryana Allen, Director of Marketing of Team Red, White, and Blue. This episode continues our series partnership with Team RWB, supporting the Old Glory Ultra Relay. In May, 12 veterans will make history by establishing a world record for carrying a single American flag from San Diego to Washington, D.C. to raise $1 million. Please visit teamrwb.org to learn more and donate. Welcome. This is Veteran Made. Our merch store is live at store.veteranmadeproductions.com. Grab hats, t-shirts, and hoodies in both performance and tri-blend cotton fabrics. Use code VM-5OFF for 5% off your purchase. Veteran Made is also sponsored by GoPills, a military-grade nootropic that contributes to brain health over time. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. I get my collagen protein from Bubs Naturals, where you can use code VETERANMADE, all one word, at checkout for 20% off your order. We're also proud to partner with True Made Foods, which makes condiments free from added sugar and sweetened with real foods. Use code VET at checkout for 15% off. We love socks in this house. I get my wife new socks every Christmas. More importantly, we love American-grown and made socks. Use code VETERANMADE15 at rucksocks.com for 15% off. And lastly, I end my day with Rack Out from Bravo Actual to maintain quality sleep, resulting in a well-rested body and mind. Use code VETERANMADE with a space between the words at checkout for 15% off your order. Enjoy the episode.
All right. Good cold morning here, the great state of Ohio for me. Good morning from Florida for you, Bryana, the great state of North Carolina for you, Margaret. Welcome both to Veteran Made.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Very excited for this. As listeners know, this is the second in our series about Team RWB and the Old Glory Ultra Relay that we have coming up later this year in May of 2025. For those listening in the future, would love to get a brief primer from both of you on who you are and what your connection is to the military and veteran community. And then we'll jump into some questions. Margaret, we'll start with you. You're on my far left.
Awesome. Thanks so much again, Carrie, for having us today. So my name is Margaret. I am the Senior Director of Advancement here at Team RWB. Long story short, I've been involved in the military community for my entire life since birth. Grew up in a military family. My dad was in the Army, moved all over. And then when I got out of, that and went to college, I kind of became involved in the veterans community by being part of the Student Veterans Club. I didn't really have a lot in common with like my civilian peers. So then from there, after I finished college, I fell into this career doing communications and marketing, specifically in the veteran military community. So I've spent my whole career, supporting initiatives like this. And then I came to Team RWB 5.5 years ago. It'll be 6 years in August. Pretty excited. Been a long time member. Running has been something I've done since high school as well. So, it means a lot to me. Health and wellness is very important in my journey. And I'm also currently married to a soldier here at Fort Bragg, or Fort Liberty now, I think is what they call it. But yeah, so that's why I'm calling in from North Carolina and just kind of my connection to the community. But again, I kind of started out in my career here at RWB doing digital content. And again, like I was in the marketing PR space my whole career. And just slowly over the past few years, the organization has shifted and changed. And now recently I took over as the senior director of advancement, which works on both the marketing department and the development department. So cool spot to be in, and just really excited about this relay.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm excited to chat about digital content and marketing in the nonprofit space, as well as development, and kind of where those two worlds collide and or mesh well with each other. Bryana, what about you?
Yeah, so like Margaret, I am a proud military brat, Air Force to be specific.
Let's go.
My mom, yeah, my mom, my dad, and my step parents are all retired military. So between the four of them, it's like 120 years of service, like collectively. So it's a lot. My ex-husband's also retired Air Force. And I talked to Margaret about this, and I joke, I'm like, I transitioned when my ex-husband and I got divorced in my late 20s. And that was like being in the military community your whole life, and it's like, oh, you can't go on base when you need health care. Oh, I can't go to the commissary. What do you mean? And trying to navigate the transition from like military life to civilian life was hard. It was challenging. And I've been at Team RWB, I think it's 2 years now. Oh wow, yep, 2 years, January 1st. And I've worked in marketing in the healthcare, like health industry space for almost 15 years now. I've covered everything from like home health and hospice to insurance and supplements and everything in between. But coming here to Team RWB was like coming home in a way. Like I didn't realize how much I missed the military community and like how much it resonates with me. And until I started back here and working in the veteran space. So super excited to be here and to talk to you today.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for that. That's actually a perspective I hadn't considered before, right? The being a military brat, as you said, but then also a dependent, married into the military, and then you had your own transition kind of away from the military community because some of those benefits and things weren't available to you anymore, and then finding the community again through working at a nonprofit is that's a really cool perspective to bring, obviously, to this conversation, but then to bring to the organization and to bring to this event as well. So I'd love to jump back. I mean, for those who have been listening or those who haven't listened yet, Mike Irwin last week talks quite a bit about the organization and the genesis of the entire organization. So go back and listen to that one if you haven't yet. I want to start to jump right into the to the Old Glory Relay and then what's becoming the Old Glory Ultra Relay from both of your perspectives. So Margaret, we'll start with you since you've been with the organization a little bit longer. So if you've been with five and a half years, that means the relay had been running for 5-ish years. Is that about right when you came on board?
Yeah, if we'd done 8, yeah. So I guess we had done maybe 6 of them,
Okay.
5 or 6.
Yeah, so we're kind of right in that spot. So, I mean, diving right in, what was it like for you to join the organization in the role that you joined the organization in the digital content space? And what was the state of the event at the time that you jumped in? And from your vantage point, what excited you about the organization and the event itself? And then what was your role in that first event that you participated in?
Oh, Carrie, I love that question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I had been a member of Team RWB since 2014, and I hadn't actually been able to participate in the Old Glory Relay because it hadn't come through, my area. I lived in DC at the time. I was like doing PR firm work, again in the VSO space, but I hadn't been able to go experience it myself. I did at one time support a couple runners who decided to run across the country, and like our local chapter would go out. And even one time I got to walk with some guy who did from Richmond to DC in 24 hours, which, I walked like 8 miles and had never done that before. I was sore for like 6 days after that. But, that was kind of my like introduction to the impact of being part of a movement so significant. So I know everybody kind of like listened to the previous podcast with Mike, but, just real quick, in case you're hopping on, the Old Glory Relay is something we've done for 8 years at Team RWB. We had done it for 8 times. We did take a break in the middle, but you carry an American flag through all different people. So you can walk, run, a few times there was cycling, and it's just what we can do when we all come together to support veterans' health and wellness. Now, to kind of go back to your question, Carrie, what it was like for me when I came on staff. The first one, I came on board in 2019 and 2020 hit. So we had to cancel things because of COVID. We actually did not do it in 2020 due to COVID, and that we had been planning on it. So it was a little bit, of a shakeup. And then we brought it back in 2021. But as you know, the world was still like shut down. So, things were difficult. It was harder to get people out. We still saw that patriotism, especially in small town America. We had people come out of nowhere and walk 8 miles just like I did, when they hadn't worked out in a while, and just really felt that. But overall, I would say, it was kind of hard to get that momentum back. And I think for a lot of organizations, especially even if you go out, like we went to Monster Jam last weekend with my son, the stadiums are just not as full as they were before COVID because the world has changed. So I think, kind of the shift here is part of that effort. But it has been really, really interesting to watch its journey. And it's always great to see everybody come out and do these things that are like hard and, seemingly impossible. But when you just take one step together, it's absolutely possible. So yeah, it was a journey in 2020, 2021 for any communicator. Trying to run across the country at the same time was definitely difficult. So yeah, did that answer your question, Carrie? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, it does. I mean, community is such a key part of Team RWB as an organization. Obviously, it's such a key part of our community, right? In the military community. And Bryana, we were talking about it earlier. Like when you get separated from the community in the immediate sense, right? Like either you were serving or you have a family member that's in the military, and then you're separated from that community. You are and you're not, right? Because you're still a member of that community, just a different part of it as a veteran, and less of a service member. But there's still that feeling of wanting to be connected, not just to each other, wanting to be connected to each other. And then you bring COVID into it. And then I just want to be connected to anybody, right? Like I want to be able to go to the grocery store. I want to be able to go to the gym. I want to be able to go outside, run, walk, hike, swim, fish, like whatever it might be. And so losing that aspect in the immediate when COVID was unfolding was difficult for everybody. For you guys, as you had put on these events, and that's a cornerstone of the organization. These events that are done at the local level, regional level, and then obviously this one being national. As a communicator and as a marketer, when did you start thinking about, all right, how are we going to tackle this problem this way as the country is dealing with something that we were getting conflicting information and we weren't sure how long it was going to last. We didn't know what was going to happen. But as a marketer and as a communicator, how did you jump right into that?
How did we jump into that? I kind of have I don't want to say the word trauma, but a little bit of trauma from that time. I think any communicator would, because no matter what you did, someone had something to say on any angle, but I think we just knew one of the things here at Team RWB that we always say is we're nimble. So, we can just like put our heads down and power through and do what it takes to get done. And we knew it was daunting. We knew it would be tough, but we all came together and said, like, we're going to finish this thing. And so I think that's kind of reflected in, how we're approaching the Old Glory Ultra Relay as well. But we pretty much just said, like, hey, we're going to accomplish this. We put together the plan. We worked with our partners. We got the word out. And we did ultimately get that flag across the country. We did a lot of great fundraising. I think it's just that level of commitment, and also being Semper Gumby. We like to say that's one of our core values, is like taking whatever hit us, whatever came our way, and working through that. We've had car accidents. We've had all kinds of stuff. Having your crisis comms plan ready so you can dust it off as you need it. Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question.
I mean, it does. Yeah, Mike and I talked about that right from the beginning of the relay. 10 plus years ago, it was, I have this idea for what this can be, but we got to start here, and we got to get scrappy, and we got to do what's right in front of us and do what we can do in the immediate to build towards something, right? And coming out of a pandemic, right? Like gives you an opportunity to reset and say, all right, let's just knock this next one out and let's do it. Bryana, how about for you? As you joined the organization a couple of years ago, there were a couple more relays that have been run. What role did you join the organization in, and what was your vantage point? As you already mentioned, loving to be reconnected to this community through the organization. So what was your vantage point? What was your role? And how did you approach it as you joined?
So when I started at Team RWB, my role was Associate Director of Content and Channel Strategy. That's a lot of words that just really means, as in the marketing and communication space, I was responsible for all of our owned channels and our owned media. So like website, social media, email, and stuff like that. Not gonna lie, the first couple months were like training by fire hose a little bit. We're a small team and we don't operate like a typical nonprofit. It's a lot like a startup. I had worked at a startup before, and it's very similar energy. Margaret just talked about the ability to be nimble. Semper Gumby is one of our core values. You don't see that in a lot of the nonprofit space. I speak from past experience a little bit on that one. And so it was just hot and heavy, and there was this Old Glory relay that we were doing and we had to promote, and I really didn't like understand or comprehend like the full concept or the scale, because I was learning like my new role, my team, everything. And I actually went on the road. So that first year in 2023 that I was here, I went on the relay and as a support team member. So it was me and Jess from our finance team. We were on the support crew from Dallas, Texas to Little Rock, Arkansas. And it was really like on the road that I understood the scope and just the impact that the Old Glory Relay had on the veteran community and then just the local communities that we ran through. I mean, that first day, just to give you an example, we partner with the VA to get the word out for these legs previously to just, hey, veterans, if you want to come carry the flag or participate in the event, here's how you can sign up. And towards the end of that last day, and they don't know, they're coordinating with a volunteer who's trying to coordinate where everybody's going to be and manage time, but people are running, some are walking. That first day, someone was in a wheelchair wheeling the flag. So, you don't know how long it's going to take. And we get towards the very end of our first day, and there's a Vietnam veteran on the side of this highway, and he'd been sitting there for hours waiting to just carry the flag for 2 miles to the next guy. And I got to talking to him, and I get chills like thinking about it. And he was like, he had drove up from Corpus Christi, Texas, so not a short distance, and he just wanted to be part of this event and give back to the younger generation of veterans. And so the Old Glory Relay is just full of stories like that. And so that was, as a marketer, that's always the challenge of like, how do we promote this event, but then capture these stories too? I think the evolution of just having now 12 veterans is important. So like being able to like hone in on the storytelling aspect, but at the same time, the impact that they're having on the broader community as well. We've already started to see it in our app, people getting inspired and encouraged by these runners, and they haven't even really done anything yet. They're just training themselves and sharing that journey. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's what marketing is storytelling, right? It's brand storytelling or product storytelling, but at its core, it is storytelling, and it's I would imagine why all three of us got into the field in our different roles. And when it goes well, and you're able to tell a human story, it goes really well, right? And that's the dance as well. When you're marketing and when you're telling brand and product stories, you have to find that humanity, you have to find that authenticity, you have to find that realness, right? And even those words I just used are buzzwords that we hear in the trades, or that we even hear in TV commercials, or we hear in branded entertainment over and over and over again. And so they start to feel like they can ring more false each time that we use them or hear them as words. But when it goes well, it goes well, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. That I don't want to disparage any other organizations, but the 800-pound gorilla in this room and in the veteran community at large is that there are some nonprofits that are better than others, and there are some bad actors out there. And so I don't want to disparage any of them, but I do want to address like what does make Team RWB different. You've both mentioned nimbleness, right? And you've both mentioned the startup mentality, and you've both mentioned that Team RWB is different than other nonprofits in the space. So this is for either one of you, and we can kind of kick some things back and forth. But what makes it different, and why is it valuable as a tool in our community?
Bryana, you want me to take that one and then?
I think we're probably thinking the same thing. So yeah, go for it.
I'm sure we are. We talk about this a lot, Carrie, of what makes Team RWB different. And, I really think every other organization out there is doing the best that they can, and this is one of the things we like to say at Team RWB is we play nice in the sandbox. We want to support the other organizations because we know that community is huge. So we want to come together. But I do think what makes us different is, and it might be getting a little bit touchy here on some things, but we do talk about this a lot. There's a victim mentality in the veteran space. And, I know I'm not a veteran myself, but I've been around this community. I've only worked in the VSO sector. And it's something we've seen, a lot, especially after the wars popped off and now the wars have changed. But the funding is like harder to come by. There's not the Afghanistan like deployments that there was, the up tempo. So getting that public support, a lot of other organizations sometimes have to kind of like lean on, the struggles that veterans face and that mentality of like, we need to help them. And we believe as an organization that it's almost come to the point where, like my dad might not tell someone that he's a veteran because he's scared of how they might look at him or, perceive him as weak when we know veterans are strong, they're civic assets, they have so much to offer. And we also know that their best days are ahead. So Team RWB, like on our marketing team and across the organization, we make a conscious effort to not lean into that narrative and instead show veterans for everything that they are and that they can be and help them see that themselves instead of falling into that, that's when like bad things happen. And we also say that it's an upstream approach versus a post adversity approach. So, we're not the organization that you call when you are in crisis. There are great organizations out there for that, but we're trying to catch them ahead of that and make sure they live a healthy lifestyle because we know that health is so important. And that's exactly what this relay is. And that's what the Old Glory Relay has been all along is how can we show people that their best days are ahead and they are capable of doing amazing, crazy things and can get inspired and get behind that mission.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important truth that needs to be told and an important truth that needs to be heard. And so I'm happy to step on those toes with you because it's a mindset and a heart set that has to change within the veteran community. Because it's not practical to think that way. Yes, there are people that are in acute crisis, and yes, there are great organizations that help for that, and those are resources that I think we would all recommend for people that are having acute crisis. But the idea of preparing yourself, your mind, your body, and your soul to not need to be in acute crisis if you don't have to be is a mindset and a heart set that every military service member and every military veteran should have, which isn't to say that you don't need to be prepared, but it is to say that the best way to prepare is to work towards not needing that kind of service. I mean, for two reasons. One, it's great if you don't need that. And two, there are people that are going to need that. So do not pull those resources from them. Right. Yeah.
Bryana, did you have anything to say?
No, I was going to say the exact same thing of, I think everyone has, so we don't pick on anybody in the veteran space. It's easy, like look at like homelessness. There's like Habitat for Humanity who builds homes and that's great. And then there's organizations that actually, teach them interview skills or a trade or something like that so that they can get a job, a more upstream kind of approach. And we're in that upstream place. Doesn't mean that there's no need for like Habitat for Humanity or a shelter or something like that to exist, because there still is. We're focused on, like Margaret said, helping veterans. We talk about it as always being mission ready, but not necessarily like mission ready as you are in the military, but as if your life is your mission. And just, when you're older, you want to be able to carry in the groceries by yourself or play with your grandkids or, be able to go for a walk around the neighborhood and not have any issue. So that's what.
Yeah, I talked about this last month on the podcast with Drew Billings from Anthem Snacks and EODstuff.com. We tend in the veteran community and service members, we tend to hyper focus on transition, and we tend to put each element of transition into its own bucket, and then each of those buckets then at different times gets more attention than the other, which obviously makes some sort of practical sense. As you're navigating your way through the world, negotiating your way through the world, you're going to have to give more attention to certain things at certain times. So I'm not dismissing that wholesale, but the idea of it's all about the professional transition. Here are the skills that I gained in the military that immediately translate to help me in a sales organization or a finance organization or a marketing organization. And I need to go all in on that and just focus on that. Well, then you're dismissing the emotional and the relational and the personal aspect of your transition out of the military, when in reality, all of those things need to be integrated. And so I think we have this fractured mindset, this fractured approach in the veteran community where we tend to hyper focus on certain things at certain times and then lose sight of the other things. When, Bryana, what I hear you saying is, well, there are all of these different ways and things that ways you can be and things you can do to help yourself move forward in life. And you need to be aware of what those things are and be aware of what those resources are, and have the self-awareness as well as the openness to hear from members of your family or people that you're working with or whoever's around you to say, hey, I think you're missing this thing. You need to think about this thing this way in order to move forward.
Yeah. And just to add to that too, Carrie, a lot of the things that we address, so holistic health and wellness is the fancy term that everybody uses. We don't normally say that one, but that really is what it is at the end of the day. Like, your sleep affects how you mentally can cope with your transition. When my husband returns from his deployment, if he's not sleeping well, that's going to be an issue down the line, and so things like that. And also, how much you work out affects your sleep. What you eat affects your sleep. So these things are really all interconnected. And I think that, to your point about the segmentation, people are like, oh, that's a mental health organization, or that's a physical health organization, that's a transition organization. But these things all go hand in hand, and you need all of them to just, be the best that you can be. So I think that's really what Team RWB tries to do, is like, we try to address those things that the other organizations are not necessarily focused on. I think that's really what we bring to the community, is just addressing those overlooked needs. And I will say sometimes it's a little bit harder for us to get, fundraising and partners, because there's not all the same data out there as there is around the mental health stuff. And we've been doing a lot of work to, highlight those studies, do our own studies to show that this really does affect all of these things. And we do have it to prove it now. But it's not the easy road, I would say. But I think everybody at Team RWB really believes that from our heart. So we're so proud to be part of it, even if it's a little more difficult, maybe.
Yeah. Sometimes the more difficult things can be, the better the results. The results can be, even if the results aren't exactly what you were expecting going into it. So let's jump into the storytelling aspect of it. When Andrea, when we met you guys, I can't remember at this point who approached who, right, with all the different stakeholders as a part of this project. But when we kind of hopped on board and had our first conversation with you and the team about telling this story and telling the story about the Old Glory Ultra Relay that we are going to accomplish here in May of 2025. The big thing that we jumped onto, and it's something that my wife, who's a veteran spouse, right, didn't serve herself, Andrea, talked about, was this is not a woe are we story. And we were applying that very specifically to the film that we're producing about this relay, but at large, our story is not a woe are we story. And so, Margaret, can you talk about some of those challenges that you're describing about the kind of storytelling that you want to do and that you do as an organization, especially as it informs the Old Glory Ultra Relay?
Yeah, absolutely, Carrie. So we all know, Bryana and I always joke about the Sarah McLachlan commercials, right? You put some sad music with a puppy who's like starving, which breaks my heart every time. Like, I'm pulling out my wallet. It works, right? And that's why people do it. And it's kind of exactly what I just said. But that is not the Old Glory Ultra Relay. And that is not Team RWB. But sometimes it's hard as a communicator to catch people's attention if you don't have the black and white. You don't have that, hook right off the bat. So we're definitely trying to take that approach through storytelling and doing it in like a fast-paced, are we going to make it way? Sully and team and Mike will tell you we are going to make it come hell or high water, and I have no doubt we will. But that is a real fear for all of us, right? So kind of like leaning into that as a storyteller, getting those hooks, but in a way that inspires people and is not, like a Debbie Downer for I just can't think of a term right now, but just like rising above that and telling the story of these amazing athletes and how they got there and what it took for them to get there and all the craziness that's going to happen along the way. I'm sure someone will get in a fight and they'll come together in the end and they'll all cross that finish line. So finding those moments is going to be really hard for us, and it's not something you can predict. This whole relay is just going to go, and we're going to, Carrie, this better than anybody. We're just going to have to tell that story as it comes. It's not something we can plan. And I think that is scary for a lot of marketing people, a lot of marketing organizations, and especially PR as well. I don't know when the flag's going to come through. We can try.
Yeah. So, I mean, along those lines, Bryana, how do you execute on not manufacturing this story, but telling the story as it unfolds, but also at the same time understanding that you're trying to tell the story in a certain way?
Oh, great question. Well, it starts, I think, from an audience's perspective, it starts with they need to have an emotional connection to these athletes and the crew, like even before the relay starts. So we're starting there of like introducing them to our audience, sharing a little bit of their training, sharing some behind the scenes content. They're in an Instagram group chat, and it's pretty hilarious, some of the things that they they say. So trying to give people glimpses behind the curtain before the Old Glory Relay, Ultra Relay kicks off, so that they feel an emotional connection, like they know these runners, and the crew too. The crew is really important, the team chiefs, before they start. On the road, it's going to be tricky. Margaret and I have had several conversations about resources and how are we going to do this, because not only will we be capturing content and trying to capture those moments for our own social media and content and video purposes, but helping each of the 12 runners and the team chiefs. So that's 15 people, helping them with that. And then we have our partner like responsibilities as well. So it's a huge undertaking, and just making sure that we have enough people on the road with them so that when these moments happen, that they can be real and natural and authentic. Because inevitably, like Margaret said, I mean, you get 15 people together and tiny little spaces for 2+ weeks. Like somebody's going to do something that irks someone, someone's going to just like be peppy, and, someone else is tired and they're going to snap. Like those things, they're just going to happen. We're all human. Capturing kind of those friction points, because it shows the authenticity and like the realness and the rawness of what they're doing, but not losing sight of the overarching mission, because they're all veterans at the end of the day, and they are bound and determined, come hell or high water, like they will meet their objective. They will get the flag to DC on May 17th, no matter what, as how they talk. And so sharing that perspective as well, and it's not prompting them. So right now we're focused, some of our runners and our team chiefs are much more adept at like this natural storytelling aspect and stuff themselves. They don't really need our help. Margaret just gave them a brand training so that they could all feel comfortable on how they talk about us and the fundraising component of what we're about to do. And our team, which is very small, is helping the others one-on-one. Like if it's, can you review this post? Can you help me put together this reel? I want to do something like this so that people understand where I'm coming from and why I decided. Like we are literally like hands-on with all of them. It's something that, stresses me out, but like in a good way. It's a good challenge to have as a marketer. I'm a little concerned our editorial calendar isn't fully baked out, because that's how I roll. But it can't be, and it shouldn't be, because you cannot script these kinds of things and these kinds of moments, and we don't want to. We want people to truly feel like they've been brought along this journey with each of the runners and with us in the process.
Yeah, it's like it's the fate of the observer, right? Like but especially as you are a member of and a leader in this organization, you want to see the event succeed. But as a storyteller, you want risk, you want drama, you want stakes, right? And so you want to try to capture those things along the way. And you kind of hope for a little bit of those things, but then you hope it gets back on track. And then, and that's obviously, we've talked about this, privately, I've talked about it with Mike. Like that was one of the most exciting things for us coming on board to make a film with you all about this, is if we just knew this thing was going to happen and hey, we're just there documenting something that we know is going to happen, then it's a fluff piece. Right. Then it's one of those commercials that we were talking about earlier that is just ringing false. But because there are stakes, and because there is risk, and because there is a team who's never worked together or run together, coming together to execute on this mission, well, I mean, that's a story worth telling because we don't exactly know what's going to happen, even if we all want the task to be accomplished.
Yeah. Oh, there's going to be moments of friction. I mean, they're all of them, the athletes and the team chiefs in their own right are athletes. They're experienced ultra runners, type A personalities. Like, I think that you have to be to take on a challenge like that. And even just how they approach their training and stuff like that, it's very different. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I know, but it's not unlike the military, a girl, I obviously was never served, but was in it my whole life. And you're just kind of like, when you move, especially if you live overseas, Margaret and I both did, just kind of thrown over there. And it's just like, oh, well, what we have in common, we're all military brats. So like, we're here and we're friends. Like,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, it's going to be like that. They'll
When we embedded with the team, so to speak, when we went down to UHP to shoot some content, to kick off this project, we were truly embedded. We got to bunk with the team, right? So myself and our director of photography, Cameron, we're in the male bunks with the runners, and Andrea, the director, was in the female bunks with the runners. And seeing these guys and bunking with these guys and being like, all right, guys, we got to go, hit the rack out and get some sleep here because we got an early day tomorrow. Well, then we get in and we all start talking. You start hearing these guys. You got high speed guys who served in the special operations community. You got a submarine officer, you've got a rescue swimmer. You've got all these people who've come from different branches, different MOSs within the branches. And then you start to see what interests them about each other. And it is not what you would expect. It's not what your average civilian would expect. Everybody would think that the SF guy would get all the attention, or the Ranger would get all the attention, when in reality, I'm listening to a Ranger and a Green Beret talk to a submarine officer and asking him all these questions about what he did and being like, dude, that's crazy. And then that guy talks about, the running and the cycling and the hiking and all the different things that he's done. And they're like, oh man, I've never done that, but I've done this. And, then you got Johnny, and everybody's going to hear eventually, doesn't even run, doesn't even train by running. He trains on his farm, and you're just like, what is this crazy motley crew of rascals that are coming together to do this? And that's back to stakes, and it's back to drama, and that's in the good sense, right? And it's back to all these different people coming together for the first time, who've come from other teams that are now on this team, running together. It makes for hopefully great entertainment, but then also hopefully some great inspiration along the way too. I asked Mike, from his vantage point as the executive director, leading the organization, but not doing the day-to-day tasks, right? Not micromanaging the team. And so where he sat, I asked him a question, about what he does and how he does it, and what the challenges are of leading the organization as the team executes on these things. So Margaret, from your perspective, how would you answer that question? Like, how do you approach leading the aspect of the team that you're leading, and then working with the other stakeholders that are at your level to help accomplish the mission?
Yeah, I think that's the most difficult part, Carrie, especially for an event like this, because it's so unpredictable. Seeing the development and the marketing side, these things have to come together perfectly for this event to work and for it to be worth it, for all this effort that we're putting in. Like, if we do this run and don't get any news coverage, that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
We're not going to achieve the goals. And it's like, what was it all for? And, I try not to think like black and white like that, but it is, that's what's keeping me up at night. But I think I would say, like, honesty is kind of how I've approached this. So any of our partners that we're working with, we're not trying to we're being very honest with them about what's going to happen. We don't know what time the flag is going to come through every day, because this is a changing thing. Like, the end day might be the 17th. It could be the 18th. It could be the 16th or the 15th if we really crush it. So just going into that with all of the partners and all the various parties and saying that up front so that they know the expectations. Bryana and I working together to know what we can deliver on for them and for ourselves. And then also being able to say, like, when we can't do something. And I think that's a lot of marketers have that trouble. Like, okay, we know we can't do that. So what do we have to do to resource it? We were talking the other day about, like, just having one person from our team in the van the whole way, Carrie, to do the social. We were like, that's not going to fly. We have 20 partners at this point for this who all need some content, and we know we need our content. And then we have 15 channels that we're basically going to manage for all the runners. So maybe we need 2 people. Maybe it's 3. How do we do this? So I think just like having your plan, knowing Mike always tells me that the plan never survives first contact with the enemy, right? So we have the plan so that we know how we can think through it, and just knowing that it's not going to go as expected, and then planning for all those elements as well. But again, just that honesty, open communication, cross collaboration is really the key. And I think it's going well so far, but we shall see.
From my vantage point. But then you also add to the fact that the rest of the tasks of the organization on a month to month, year to year basis are not changing. You are still, the organization is still running the way that it needs to day, even while you try to accomplish this monumental task.
And I think that's Bryana, that's exactly why Bryana is here. She is amazing at that. Her and the team have been working so hard the past couple months to make sure like that whole month is scheduled. Everything we've got going on so that Marcom team can really focus just on the development stuff. Or, if we need to bring in somebody else, we figure out how to do that for what parts. So Bryana, I don't know if you have anything to add there, but I know that's your bread and butter.
Yeah, I'm a marketer, so by nature I'm a planner. And, there are certain things you can't plan for, like the variables in the Old Glory Ultra Relay. We know when we're doing it. We know we're going to know certain events and stops along the way. We can't plan for the variables. We have a lot of our content revolves around our programs and our events that we have going on for Team RWB. And fortunately, like a lot of them don't really change. So like we have our monthly missions. So we over the last year and a half or so, worked out a really good comms plan for those. We have our Eagle Fit program, which also has its own newsletter. So there's a lot of that stuff. We know the cadence and the types of comms that work and when and how frequently to talk about them. So I spent a bulk of the end of last year planning all of that out for this year. So we would know what was coming and I would know where those friction points were so that we would be able to adapt and switch gears and focus heavily on the Old Glory Ultra Relay when we needed to as a team.
And then I said, hey, let's do a podcast series and add 100 assets to your calendar. And you're like, oh, great. Thanks, man.
Right, it's important.
Things, and we're not going to say no.
So what I'd love to hear as we kind of start to wrap things up here from both of you. It's January as of this recording. This episode will be live mid-February. So, we're a few months away. But as of now, what's the biggest challenge that each of you foresees? I'd love a different answer from different vantage points. And then what's the thing that has you the most excited? Either one of you can take it first, and either one of you can do it in either order. But biggest challenge that you foresee at this moment in time, and the thing you're most excited about. Not finishing doesn't count as an answer. I want to hear like the tactical thing along the way that's most exciting to you.
You go first, Bryana.
Okay. The biggest challenge, as I can see it right now, is resources and resource management. Like I said, we have a small team. We are a nonprofit, so we have a small budget too. So how do we account for that and still get some really epic content and storytelling along the way? That's the biggest challenge. And for me, Carrie, because I was there at UHP with you and Dre, it was very abstract. Mike's tasked us with this Old Glory Ultra Relay. We're going to make it happen. And it felt very abstract until we were there and we got to see the runners and the team chiefs and watch them interact. And I realized this is something really special and really, really epic. So for me, it's a challenge, but it's like one of those challenges as a marketer that comes across like once in a career. Honestly, like most marketers don't get to work on something that's exciting. So there's challenges. Yeah, there are things that keep me awake, like resource management. But at the same time, like this is a really incredible opportunity. I think we as an organization have an opportunity to make a huge impact, not just on the veteran community, but our nation as a whole, and really kind of lead the charge on something pretty epic and special. And so for me, at the end of the day, it's worth it.
I love that answer. I remember you and I were walking across the field talking about that thing. We both kind of had the same epiphany at the same time, where you had said this was like very conceptual, very like, man, this sounds like cool and epic and inspirational, but I'm not actually sure like how or even what, right? And then we were there and we're seeing it, and it just hit us square in the chest, like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing, right? And there's a lesson there too, right? As storytellers or as entrepreneurs, that like you got to start somewhere. You got to start with the concept. You got the marketing, the pipeline, right? Start with the concept, execute on the concept, right? Like iterate as you go, right? You have to start somewhere, or if you start with the full picture of the end goal in mind, you'll get very, very overwhelmed. But if you start with an epic concept and then you iterate and execute on it along the way, it gets more exciting and sometimes more challenging, but also more rewarding. And then you're able to chunk it out as you do it, and you're able to start to see, the forest for the trees. Yeah. Margaret.
Okay, so I think that the biggest challenge that I'm worried about is creating that momentum authentically. So, Carrie, we all know that the biggest campaigns that have been successful, I mean, you could look at like the Barbie movie as an example. Listen to a ton of podcasts about it because they took the world by storm, or Taylor Swift, even, which I know sounds so trivial, but these are good things for us to look at, and you can apply big lessons to smaller campaigns. But they all had crazy lead time. They had been planning the Barbie movie for 3 years out and all those partnerships to bring it to fruition. And it seems like, oh, people just caught on and got this momentum. But no, there was a really smart marketer and public relations campaign planned years ahead of time to make that the reality. And we don't have that luxury. We really only started doing this last summer, maybe last fall. So, just making sure that we're able to get that snowball of momentum with all of these individuals it's like kind of a gamble. It's not something that you can guarantee on, but we also haven't had that time ahead of time. So Bryana and I and team have been working really hard. Like, how do we leverage these stories so that we get the word out? And then maybe at the last day, people are coming out of the woodwork, like Forrest Gump, like we saw with that guy, Paul Johnson, who ran across country last year. If you haven't, checked him out, you definitely should. But people just came out of the woodwork. People who hadn't run ever ran 10 miles with him that day. And we took over Times Square at the end of his cross country run. So how do we get that momentum is the thing that keeps me up at night. And we're going to try our best. Absolutely. But I really think that we're onto something with the partners we have, the individuals, and I think we'll get there. But, it's not as organic, I think, as people typically look at those if you're not a marketer and assume that they are. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, because you do this event annually, right? So it's not like, because people might be listening and say, well, you could have started 3 years ago planning for it, but it's like, no, you do this event annually, and so then this year it increased in scope within the year, within the time frame of when this next one was going to be executed. What excites you?
Actually, we didn't know we were going to do this, really. We had kind of talked about like retiring the Old Glory Relay. And then Mike had this dream. I think he probably told you about it like way back when.
Yeah.
And we just saw the changing space, and we saw that we really felt compelled. We had to do something like this to show the community. So it kind of did, just decided we're going to will this to existence a little later than expected.
I love it. So what has you the most excited then, Margaret?
Honestly, I think the documentary, and that's not to be a cop-out, but I've never had the privilege of working on something that big, depending on who picks this up. I think that's going to be really exciting and such a cool opportunity for Team RWB. So I'm excited because personally, it's something I haven't done before. And then I think it's really going to help put the organization on a map and put these veterans in a new light that, isn't talked about very often. So I'm excited, not just for me, but for the community and like what this does for veterans. So, yeah.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love that answer. All right. So to wrap things up, where can folks find you two, and where can folks find the organization? And most importantly, where can folks find more information about this event? Where can we drive traffic to help with donations and awareness for the event and the individual runners?
I would say everything is at teamrwb.org. You can donate on there. Join the team. It's free. Anyone can join, not just veterans, but civilians like myself, just anybody who cares about the community. Donations are on there as well. Social media is really, really big for us. So please follow us on every channel. It's just at Team RWB. Myself, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. So I guess it's X now, but would be happy to connect with anybody if you want to follow along. And Carrie, I'm sure you'll, kind of like tag us in the episode, but love to connect with anyone. And then Bryana, did I miss anything that you want to, where can people find you?
Oh, people, yeah, people can find me. Right now, I would connect with me mostly on LinkedIn. So Bryana Allen, if you go to the TMRW staff, if you're having a hard time finding me, you'll find me there. And I'm working on an Instagram profile because I am an ultra runner now too. So I'll be sharing some content and maybe even my own behind the scenes stuff as we get closer to the relay. working with the runners. So.
And then, sorry, I didn't mean.
Go ahead.
The other thing too is if anybody was interested in like sponsoring, like if you're just listening to this and wow, this is something I want to get behind, that's all right on the website as well. It's just on the home slider. You can go to Old Glory Relay and email us directly. And I get those. So we will answer you. I promise.
Great. Yes, we will tag and collaborate and put those links in the show notes as we move through this series of the podcast. So to end each episode of the podcast, I ask an open-ended question. What's on your heart and your mind for our community? Could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we've already spoken about today. Whoever wants to go first, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
That's a good question. What's on my heart and my mind? I feel like there's change in the air, like positive change in the air as it relates to the veteran community, military community at large. And I'm really excited about that. I personally, I'm not a veteran, but I think Margaret and I get some kind of points being like in the military our whole lives, serving in some regard. I would say if you're listening to this and you're a veteran and you're not connected with Team RWB, and this is not a plug, I highly encourage you to get involved. Like Margaret mentioned, it's free. You take a little personal health assessment, you get a free red shirt like what Margaret's wearing, and get connected with the people in your community or in the app. For me personally, it's helped me a lot. I was a runner and I got injured, so I really hadn't run much, and we encourage everybody to take on a BFG. And so my first year, 2023, I decided to run the Marine Corps Marathon. I had never run a marathon. So I basically went from being able to barely run a 5K to running a marathon in 10 months. And here in like a week and a half, I'm tackling my first 50-mile race. And that was all honestly with the support and encouragement of mostly veterans in the Team RWB community. And that's just running. We have groups for cycling, functional fitness, rocking. I mean, whatever you're into, you'll find your group there, and you'll get encouraged, and your health assessment and everything will show up too.
I love it, Margaret.
All right, so mine's like a little bit of a different direction and not really RWB related, but I think Bryana would agree. I've written a lot about like that military transition as a brat. And I think I would say like for veterans out there who might be listening, like look out for the brat or like former spouse, because I think there's really a space for us in this community. Like I found my space here, I've been part of it since college. And I think that's really important and sometimes like overlooked in a way. So I'd say just like keep an eye out for the brats in your community, especially if they've been in there their whole life, like they're transitioning too. And I'm not saying like they need like special support, but I think we do fit in. And so for other brats out there, I would say like, don't be scared to go approach the veteran organizations and be part of Team RWB, because that community is there for you as well. So
I love that answer, and I would echo it by speaking directly to the veterans, right, about their kids and their spouses or former spouses. It's very easy for veterans to get, again, back to what I said earlier, hyper focused on specific things. And if you get hyper focused on your transition and what you're missing and what you don't have anymore, and your community, and not realizing that you actually share that community, and you need to integrate and reintegrate with the community at large, whether that's your street, your town, your city, your state, the country, right? Like the veteran community is very strong, and it should be. And that's wonderful, but it's not the only community out there, and we're not the only ones who have the community, right? We need to share it with each other and with others, and integrate other communities in. So well said. Thanks for bringing that up, Margaret.
So thanks, Carrie.
Well, thank you both. Thank you both for your time. Thank you both for your work. Very, very excited to be on this journey with you both and the rest of the team. And excited to share this series out and make this film together.
Same. Thank you so much. We appreciate everything.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye.